like Texas and Florida, that we as a country are currently passing laws that deny trans teenagers gender-affirming therapy, or in Florida, the infamous Don't Say Gay bill that forces teachers to out their students to their parents under the threat of legal repercussion. It also forbids educators to teach any content involving a same-sex couple or any LGBTQ person, specifically in grades 1 through 3, labeling it as sexual education. Merely acknowledging the fact of a gay person is not sexual education. I'm sorry, that's just not how it works. That only shows to me and the rest of us that you view members of the LGBTQ community as sexual objects, and you just don't want your children to know of our existence. This lack of exposure leads to ignorance later in life. For example, I was called a slur simply walking down the hallway last week. Or what about Holly, a mom in Texas?
Most of the time, being queer at San Pedro is perfectly fine for the most part. You know, you get comments like I did every once in a while, but obviously it's very important that is never that person's fault. Like whatever you're wearing, or if you're wearing makeup, or the way you did your hair, that doesn't justify you being harassed.
Today's rally, every kid in GSA went without speaking for the entire day, and this was our breaking the silence for National Silence Day, which is a day that is to honor kids who are being bullied for being queer, kids who have committed suicide for being queer, because rates of kids who go through that are astronomically higher than their non-LGBT counterparts. So this was somewhat of a silent protest. There are children who are sheltered their whole lives and aren't taught queer history or what it means to be queer, that queer people even exist, and they still have like homosexual feelings or transgendered thoughts and stuff and such. They still are probably going to hear about it at some point, and kids cannot be groomed, so to speak, into being queer. You just are born that way.
All these students who are out in high school and some even in middle school these days, the courage that takes is most heterosexual straight people just can't really wrap their heads around or understand how scary that is. And then these kids right now, you know, Dylan and Haley and Mishka, they and Roxy, and they make me so proud because they're gonna be the next generation of people who make the world a little better. And you know, I look at my students that I teach in class every day, and they all know somebody who's gay, or they all have a relative who's gay. And when you talk to them, most of them don't think it's a big deal, right? And that gives me hope. We like to make a little bit of history here in the South Bay. We are the oldest, Pride Club is the oldest LGBTQ organization in San Pedro. This is the nation's first LGBTQ classroom library.
These resources have helped me because as a queer person, when I was younger, I didn't really have conversations regarding certain experiences, LGBTQ history, whereas this club has sort of helped to shed light on those topics, and it has helped integrate our history and our contributions.
People need to see themselves, you know? They need to have role models that they can look at me and just go, wow, I really like this teacher and he's so cool and he's had a successful life and I can be that, right? The more diverse your faculty can be, the better. And fortunately, we have a pretty diverse faculty here, and it absolutely makes a difference.
It's also important to remember that you don't need to stick to a certain label. It is, being LGBTQ and being queer, it's a large umbrella term, and you can be queer without identifying as gay, trans, or bi.
I really feel like how you think at this age isn't going to change so much in the future, because being queer isn't something that can change at all. And even if you do realize new things about yourself, what's wrong with speaking out in the present?
Luckily, I'm in a position where I have a very lovely family who's accepted me for whatever I was all of my life. So I know I will always have a place at home that is safe and wonderful. But for people that don't have that quality, or people that are not in that situation where it's unsafe for you to come out, or your parents just are not as open and accepting, it's disheartening because you think, like, one day I'm finally going to be able to get out, and then the government kind of ruins it by passing it into legislation, which is really disheartening because it's 2022. Get with the times.